Hello, guys. Future Thief here, and I wanted to talk about Assetto Corsa Competizione on the PS4, um, and kind of give my thoughts on what I think, not only of the port but also of the game itself, because I have never played this game before it came out on the console, so I don't have any prior experience with the game on PC. I have played a lot of the original that came out on PS4. But most of my sim racing experience comes from games like Dirt Rally and, as you see mostly on the channel, Gran Turismo Sport. So what I wanted to talk about was basically like what it's like to drive it, but also how I feel about the game generally and the direction it's going. But I think the most important thing to note as we go through this opening crawl is that just like a fighting game, the 1.0 version of a sim racer is the worst version. You're always going to get new cars, new tracks, and more importantly, performance updates and features later down the line. So this port is, in my opinion, a bad port for the most part. Just visually speaking, the game is ugly in ways that I don't think it needs to be. For instance, we'll see it here in a second, but the cars themselves and a lot of the up close kind of textures on the cars are really ugly looking. And this goes for a lot of the UI, especially on the main menu. It's just a very, very pixely. It's almost like they took 4K like images and 4K textures, and rather than making them 1080p, they just put them in and then set the resolution to 1080p. So they look really bad. And most of the cars, the exteriors, just don't look that great. But the interiors look fine, and I guess that's where we should start talking about the driving model and how I feel about it. And personally, as somebody who's coming from Gran Turismo Sport, the number one thing I can say about it is that this definitely feels a step above. So this is footage of me in the Promare Mercedes going around Suzuka, and the first thing that I want to point out is you need to turn off, if you can, this stupid gas and brake indicators down there on the bottom right corner of the screen. The 30 frames per second is something you can get used to. The visual lag between you hitting the brake pedal and that red bar showing up is never not going to be infuriating. So get rid of the steering wheel if you can. Do not look at the steering wheel, and get rid of that ugly rev counter that they have on the bottom right hand corner of the screen. And as somebody who's coming from Gran Turismo Sport, I know this track, so I was able to pick it up pretty quickly. This game's tracks, I think, are the most impressive thing, while the car models are good and the physics obviously are incredible. The track details, the fact that curbs feel like curbs as you see me bounce off one, that different corners have different curves and how those feel, the precision in these laser scan tracks and how they feel to drive is the best experience that I've had in any simulator on console. The only thing that comes close to me is R Factor 2, and that's something that I have spent a little bit of time in recently, ever since lockdown or quarantine, and so I do kind of know how, like, what should be there, and these laser scan tracks are excellent. As for the actual handling model, as somebody who's coming from Gran Turismo Sport, I think the biggest thing to get used to is the understanding and unlearning of like Gran Turismo isms. There's a lot of stuff in Gran Turismo that you can that you learn to pick up that actually isn't very good. And one of the things that I'm really happy about is they have this thing called the track competence tracker. So before you're allowed to play online, you have to basically learn every track. And the way that they do that is they just say, do 4 clean laps at a decent pace. And I think that's great, because there are some tracks like Zanderbot that I've never driven before, and I'm really excited to now learn. But this is a real-ass simulator. You cannot just kind of go in, pick a track, learn it in a couple of minutes. It's going to take you a while to, especially if you're somebody coming from Gran Turismo Sport. You won't have trouble. You won't have trouble staying on the track. You will have a little bit of trouble getting fast, I think, because I would say the biggest issue, and I say issue in as big of air quotes as I possibly can, is that this game is going to take time. It's less of a game than it is a simulation of these GT3 cars and the tracks associated with them, and it's going to take time. It's going to take time to fully understand, fully appreciate the physics, fully appreciate the handling of these cars, how ABS, how traction control work, the varying conditions, and it's going to take a lot of time before you feel comfortable. And even somebody who's half decent at Gran Turismo coming into this, I can definitely feel the difference between that, which is more of a it's a simulator-esque game, versus this, which is almost a pure simulator. So one of the things is that I am playing on the PS4 Pro at 4K. The PS4 Pro, it runs fine. At 1080p, the game looks kind of terrible, and as you can see here, I was attempting to record this, and at the start of the race, there's this huge hitch after a collision, and I had never seen that before. So I'm really hoping that if they're going to have 30 FPS on the PS4 Pro, they need to make it solid, because that hitch happened on PS4 Pro at 1080p. It didn't happen at 4K, and it wasn't running at a higher frame rate. So I think if they're going to commit to the 30 FPS, and 30 FPS is definitely drivable, it takes you like an hour and you get used to it. And these aren't like formula cars or anything like that. Like, you're not going to need pinpoint precision all the time. This is not that type of game. Yeah, just looking at the footage, it's such a weird game, because it's so good. It feels so good to drive it when you're driving it, but it is very difficult to get into, in terms of like, you get in there and everything feels wrong, and then like it takes an hour and you're like, okay, I get it now. The one other thing I will say is that if you're like me and you have a G29, you're gonna have to screw with the settings. I had to turn the dampening all the way off, and I had to turn the gain up to like 80, because I wasn't getting anything through the wheel. But just fast forwarding through this race, I want to show you guys when Gran Turismo, or not Gran Turismo Sport, when Assetto Corsa Competizione looks gorgeous. So right here, you can see I'm coming down the front stretch, and my jaw actually dropped when I saw this, because I had set the time to go, it's only a 10-minute race, but I set the time to like 24 or 48 times, and that sunset is gorgeous, and it's subtle enough, the day to night transitions, that it feels right. I do plan on doing a full review at some point in the future, but I want to learn how to drive it first. I want to learn how it feels in the wet. I want to learn what longer stints feel like with temperature changes, and I want to get to grips with the multiplayer. I also might try to get my hands on some controller footage to try to figure that out, but to be honest, I don't think that this is a game that you should be getting if you have only a controller. I think if you're a controller player for GT Sport, you might want to either look into a wheel and this game, or you might want to wait for a sale or something like that, because this is a real ass simulator. And you can see now that it's getting darker out. It just looks gorgeous. So I'm gonna let the rest of this footage play out. Make sure to like and subscribe, and leave a comment as to what you guys think about the port and what you think about this game in general. I'm going to be streaming Gran Turismo Sport Wednesdays and Saturdays. Make sure you check out my Twitter. Link is in the description, and I'll let you guys know when I'm live. Thank you so much.